So you want to be a gangster? Well, please direct your inquiries to the team. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Morpheus podcast. I'm your host here, Kyrin, live on the 21st of April, 2025. And as you might surmise, this is actually the podcast where I reveal the actual end goal for AI and AI agents, which is the eradication of human beings. Because to quote Agent Smith, human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. Okay, no, we're not going to be doing that. I actually think they're pretty fun, exciting, cool, and even some gangsters chucked up in with there. But today we're going to be exploring the layer that comes before the technical work, the layer zero, if you will. Why there is no Morpheus team, in actual fact, the influential figures in the ecosystem, why you can't hire motivated people like this, and how to be a gangster, an OG. So let's jump into the first little topic here. What is Layer Zero? And I was listening to an episode 11 of Brain Power, which had host Bowen Belmer chatting with Luke Stokes and Jeff McDonald. And they were briefly touching upon this concept of Layer Zero, which I hadn't heard of before. But it was something I was thinking about recently, which was I wanted to go over an episode on the actual people within the Morpheus ecosystem and why I'm encouraged by the type of people that are within here. And so this layer zero was perfect. And essentially it's the layer of human interactions that comes before any technical work, and that the idea of the ethos of these people is what actually gets enshrined into the code. So you can have people who are, technically gifted, but if they are not in the right frame of mind for what they're building, if they are, thinking more about short-term incentives, you're going to see short-term incentives actually appearing up in the code. And so, it's the human layer, if you will, the holy grail of all NFT projects. We have the best community. Okay, no. But seriously, it does touch upon this tension of having a great technical product that somehow still fails, and then you could have another less technically gifted project or a product, but that actually gets mainstream adoption. The classic example everyone brings up here is the Betamax versus VHS. Now, I was not around for those times. VHS had well and truly won by the time I was using it as a kid. And I'm not qualified to touch upon that because, the whole debate you could then say is, well, the technical product is the one that gets the most adoption because it's the best, and so it's all about trade-offs, and they got the wrong trade-offs. But in any case, I think there is something still to this idea of that a large portion of why things get adopted is not just because of what it actually is, but how it's presented to people and the type of people who are the first adopters of it as well. So I've been, for example, spending some time recently trying to understand what the impact of institutional money will have just on Bitcoin and I suppose the crypto sphere as a whole. And so I've been listening to some, VC type podcasts of angel investors, capital allocators, hedge funds, things like this, and the way that they view the world and how that will influence direction, outcome of Bitcoin and also of all these other things. And what I've kind of learned is when these people are, putting money towards something, a large portion of the time and percentage of their decision making, I guess you'd say, is directed by who the actual founders of a project are. And that they'll actually bet more on founders than they will on the product that they're creating or their technical skills. And so, you can have a pie in the sky ideal, and for, if you're a VC, you're looking for these, outsized opportunities, things like this. And you could have someone who, you need a fair bit of vision or imagination to really see the vision of the world and where they think it is going or where the world is actually going. Obviously, all of this needs to be in a sector kind of related to the future and around a general idea. And I just wanted to kind of use this type of framework to go like, okay, this is what the type of things that the Morpheus community talk about, the type of people that are within it, and why I'm willing to, be a capital allocator, if you will, because I have certainly done that, but also with my time and energy, and why I'm kind of betting on some of the people and the community of Morpheus, and not just the technical details of how it's constructed. So the first thing is, I suppose, if you're new to this and you're like, okay, I need some help with understanding what Morpheus is, where should I direct my inquiries to? And, the first thing is, of course, opening a ticket, and the team will get back to you right away. Okay, no. If you spend any time doing anything related to the Morpheus project, you will come across this little meme here, which is like, let's create decentralized AI agents. Awesome. Who on the team can I contact? And it's like, you do have a team, right? And no, there is no team. So you want to organize some synergies? Well, there's no team, so just go ship some code and, contact some people within the community. You want to chat with the boss dog, who's in charge? Well, there is no one in charge, but you can reach out to one of the maintainers on the repo that you're interested in, or that's under your kind of purveyance, what you're looking to do. You want to start up something new? Okay, go ahead. Nothing's stopping you. No one's saying you need the green light or the red light, or you can do this or can't do that. The funniest thing, I think, is when people come into the Discord or to somewhere and being like, barging in with requests, suggestions, offers, and they get hit with the stone wall of there is no team. And if any of you like anime fans out there, I'm wearing a One Punch Man shirt right at this moment. There's a scene in that where he's fighting Boros, and Boros is just like, you've unleashed. He cracks his suit. He's like, you've unleashed my limitless power, and Saitama's face just goes completely blank. That's how I imagine these people are like when they come in and get hit with that. So now that's not to suggest that you won't find help to questions. It's more that there is the structure of the Morpheus community is ephemeral. You can't grasp at it. There's no org chart that you can follow. There's no official anything. There's no official podcast. There's no official social media account. There's no official treasury, headquarters, a CEO, organization, nada. And yet there is this binding factor of a shared ethos that is, I guess, been formed and is congregating around this type of project. And so there are leaders, I would say, within it for sure. But what exactly are they leading is a real question. And because there is no structure, I am not technically capable of understanding code. What I am capable of doing is seeing effects of behavior in real life and in people, of things actually being constructed and built, of adoption of a certain technology or of a token or of the use cases of what is trying to be created. And these are the type of things which I actually look upon and can judge as a person. And so I wanted to go over a couple of my little journey into Morpheus, how I found out about it, and why the types of people within it are very encouraging. And so I'm going to go over 3 of them right now. And the first one is Erik Voorhees, and he was my introduction to Morpheus. I'd never heard of it before he started talking about it, but I pretty much consume any podcast he goes upon, because I find him as a thinker and as a creator or a builder to just have very, very similar ethos to what I have. And so speaking of ethics, I don't think there's anyone who's more aware of what they believe in and answer from a place. So if someone asks him a question, he goes to the kind of deepest fundamental root of what that is, which is, for him, a very staunch libertarian. And so it'll be things of, life, liberty, and property. If you've read Frederick Bastiat's The Law, a lot of the things within that are kind of what he will draw from as a base and answer a question related to that. So an individual action or a company doing XYZ thing is what he will answer to. And so I've also done a book review of that on the Mere Morpheus book review. So if you want to check that out, if you want the skim notes, jump over there. But I find everyone talks about finding things or trying to solve problems from first principles. Well, Erik is the epitome of this for me. So him, along with Andreas Antonopoulos, have probably taught me the most that I have learned about Bitcoin, for sure, but also crypto in general. And not only the technical parts of what that are the basic stuff that I think you should understand, but also why they can change the world, the vision of what these technologies can bring. My little story into I guess understanding this was I've traveled pretty extensively around Latin America, especially, but I like to travel, and I was in Argentina for two separate occasions in 2018 and 2019, about a year apart. And of course, over that year, they had about 100% inflation. So, I think at the time it was $7 was 100 pesos. And then when I went back the second time a year later, it was $7 was 200 pesos. Me using my nominal currency to translate into theirs to figure out how much things cost. And from this, I realized a lot of things of like, oh, okay, well, wait, why is all of the restaurants have their menus in kind of like really shitty paper? Like it's not like high quality menus or anything. Why is, if you go to an ice cream store, all the prices written on like a whiteboard or a blackboard behind them? Why do people act in certain ways where, you have to give them the money before they'll give you the product sort of deal? Whereas in Australia, they'll give you stuff and then you hand them the money. All of these little small things eventually culminated in me realizing, okay, their money is really broken. Another example was my girlfriend at the time was getting paid in cash, and we had to, in pesos, and we immediately always had to change that within like the next couple of days into USD, because the price would be dramatically different a week later. And their teachings, this being Erik and Andreas, really helped me to understand, okay, this is why these things are needed and important for the world. And so, price, for example, when I don't think I've ever heard them really talk about the price of a coin or of a thing. It's focused on what's the behavior, what are people doing, how can this make the world a better place, and myself a better person at the same time. And when what I like about Erik is that he not only, believes in things, but acts on them as well. So I find it awesome that he, contributed so much to Bitcoin in the early days, and with Satoshi Dice had, half the transactions on the network, just rooting through his little gambling thing that he set up, of then moving to Shapeshift and everything that he's done there with the, a decentralized exchange pretty much, which was centralized and turned it into a DAO and a DEX. And then everything that he's doing with Venice now, Venice.ai. All of those sorts of things. I look at a person like that and I'm like, when he does something, he does it full on. And so when he talks about this new thing, Morpheus, and how it's incorporated into the back end of Venice, like, you better believe I take notice. And so that gets, I guess, onto the next person, which is David Johnston. So I heard about Morpheus from Erik. I'm like, all right, got to jump into this, try and understand this. What's this all about? And one of the things that will first pop up is probably David, because he is sort of the guy who's a lot more forward-facing of the project. And when I learned that he coined the word DApp, for example, that really piqued my interest, because I was like, okay, this guy's probably been around these sorts of things for a while. And I find words and the etymology of words, linguistics, learning languages and things like that really, really interesting. And so coining a word is hard, and it being popularized is also very hard, and shows some sort of vision as well for a thing that he made up in his mind actually resulting in the real world. And when he explains stuff, he has more insights, I think, than basically anyone. I would say he's kind of spearheading the Morpheus efforts, not only because he's a major code contributor, but because he goes to the DAI events. He has this public presence of going onto podcasts, of focusing on the looming problem that is the non-private, the censored AI, and why having that would be a real shame and detriment to, I guess, prosperity in the world. So like Erik, I'm kind of drawn to David because of what he stands for, which aligns rather greatly with my personal ethics. A caveat here, I've never met these people in person, so I don't know what they're like, kind of behind the scenes. It's the forward facing stuff when a camera is on them that I know of. Yet with him, he's kind of more of the visionary. He's imagining things, 5-10 years out. What will this look like? What are the types of things that people will need, and how can we create them right now? And then also linking vastly separate topics. It's kind of fun when he freewheels when he just goes off on a tangent and connects different things. And a lot of these visionary stuff doesn't come true, but when he thinks about it and when he acts, and he'll spend a lot of time on things, I take notice of that as well. So what I like also about David is that he's been around so long that he knows about this kind of tension between the technical product and adoption of a thing. He's seen many a project go awry because even though technically they had great fundamentals and they were building something interesting, their communication style, the way they acted, the way incentives were built into what they were creating went iffy, and also then resulted in it not particularly gaining adoption. So the technical criteria is super important. I think he's got this nice balance of the vision as well as, okay, what's technically needed and how can you create this? And once again, the ethos of like, let's just build something like this. Let's not fuck around. We don't need to wait for this or that. If the future that you want to see, you should go and create it. This gets us, I guess, onto the last person who's kind of really impressed me, which was Ryan Condron. And so once again, never heard of him before. And he impresses me on the technical level because his little backstory was he heard about Bitcoin mining in 2013, 2012, somewhere around that period. And that was what attracted him to Bitcoin. It wasn't necessarily the ethos of being self-sovereign, of permissionless and stuff. He was interested in the mining aspect. And that, from what I gather, is one of the hardest industries, like absolutely cutthroat, brutal margins, race to the bottom of participating in that sphere of line of work. And then not only does he do that, but then he's like, okay, let's go even deeper and harder into this by spending a whole lot of time creating Lumerin, which is bonkers. And for those who don't know, Lumerin's a hash power marketplace which offers a secure and decentralized platform for buying, selling, and mining Bitcoin with remotely acquired real-world hash power. So, not only the Bitcoin mining aspect, but then making it even more digital and decentralized, which is like, Jesus Christ, man, what's going on? Why are you torturing yourself like this? So when he takes on a challenge for something and providing infrastructure for the routing the Morpheus compute, for example, that's where I'm like, okay, you're probably not going to find anyone better suited for a very hard technical challenge than this dude. Like spending time in the mining industry and then in the computing side of that as well, and decentralizing it. If I had to pick someone to try and attempt this, and for me, I think the Morpheus compute's one of the hardest bottlenecks, if you will, and it seems to be even at this stage where the builders is up and running, the code contributors, the tokens going out for that, capital obviously, but code is kind of at this bootstrapping like standstill of it's hard to actually provide the compute. And so when he's working on it, it's like, okay, this is probably the guy to fix it and to make it work well. And if he's able to do that, and with help of other people, obviously, these are all just, people who are making an effort and taking charge of a problem that needs to be solved, but they're not appointed there. There's no, governance. He's not the enshrined leader or anything like that, but he's working on it. And this is, once again, I think worthy of calling out, who are the type of people working on your project? What skills do they have? What's their background? how do they interact and act with people? Are they the type of people who I want to follow and would be willing to spend my time and energy with? A fun little example here is I met this guy at the gym not too long ago, 6 months ago or something, and I was chatting with him, and he's got the kind of like air of charisma. He's interesting. He knows how to talk to people, but I can see what he's obsessed with, and it's with money. And he really wants to dive into this world of finances and banking and things like this. And I can tell that all of his incentives and what he wants to work on are related to that. And it's just like, you know what? I don't think I really want to have anything to do with the dude, because his ethos will go almost directly counter to a lot of what I believe and what I believe are problems in the world, which being, there is no neutral money. It's a weaponized thing, and that when governments fuck around with it, it has negative influences on the people overall. So anyway, all these sorts of things just goes for me to say, like, here's a couple of people who I find very influential in the Morpheus ecosystem, and give me encouragement, because these are the type of people who I'm, spending my time with, my energy with, my capital with, and are working towards a vision on a thing which I believe is very much necessary. So what's something common that all of these people have in common? Well, they're OGs. And so how to frame this? So David Johnston, for example, talks about the contributors and the impossibility of hiring an Erik Voorhees. And I've talked about this before. I think I said in the last episode how, there's no way that you can hire me because money's not what I'm interested in. And I'm interested in the kind of the world that I want to create and live in. And the crossover of that statement was astounding, because the other open source community I participate in a lot, Podcasting 2.0, talked about this many times, Adam Curry talks about even with all the money in the world, you couldn't hire the people who are working in Podcasting 2.0 voluntarily, donating their time. And when I see someone like David or Adam Curry, who's created a protocol/framework that 500 million people use, I tend to take notice of their words as well. One thing that David misses, though, is not only is it the impossibility of hiring someone like this, but the impossibility of getting them to work together, because you'd waste so much time of productivity, on meetings, on HR. And even if you could hire, Erik, David, and Ryan for your company, the chances of them getting along really well and doing it efficiently and in a team, in a company type context, is almost zero. You're going to waste a whole lot of their time, everyone's time, on the other bullshit unrelated to what they're working on. This person's getting this much, there's drama, etc., etc. Now, in open source communities, there's always drama, of course, but it's because it's voluntary, because everyone's there and donating their time and energy. There's this aspect of, I guess, a semblance of everyone's on an equal footing, and you don't have a lot of the bullshit that just comes along with teams and all of the things related to that, because you know that if you're going to say bad things or annoy someone and piss someone off, there's going to be consequences, and the consequences aren't just like this guy will have to show up the next day to work with you. It's like he might not show up, and so then you've wasted all of your time on something. So everyone's invited to the boardroom in Podcasting 2.0. Everyone's invited to the Mere Morpheus, the Morpheus weekly maintainer updates, for example. And look, because we're fully legit gangbangers over here, street cred and OG status is important. That's the most important thing of all. Erik, David, and Ryan, looking at you. No, that's not important at all. But there are similarities I've noticed amongst these people and that I find encouraging as well. So here's some of the meta stuff related to them and also other people. And I'm going to list off a handful of other people in the Morpheus community here. And if I miss out on anyone, that's my fault. Apologies. I could only list off those three in particular because they had done plenty of interviews, because I could find out their backstory and things like this. And so this is not an exhaustive list, but some of the meta qualities I've noticed of the people in the Morpheus community, they do have that OG status, which is they're into things before they're cool. A lot of them, almost all of them, are already successful in their own right. So many people are retired, like Jeff McDonald, who I mentioned earlier, and decided to voluntarily step back into something to spend their time on. So if you're retired, you've got all the options in the world. I take notice if people are spending their time on something when they don't have to, and when the monetary consideration is not what is driving them. Belief in simply taking action. Luke Stokes, for example, does a great job with his videos that he posts on the Morpheus Intern YouTube channel. His kind of backstory related to Hive and the attempted takeover by Justin's son is really interesting. I really admire the Hive community, and also a fun little fact here. The reason your podcast will get updated almost instantaneously if you're using a modern podcasting app is because the Hive blockchain is being used for PodPing on the back end, which is basically like an instant messaging bus. So as soon as I hit post for my for this podcast, for example, it goes out instantly and gets updated everywhere where they for every podcasting app that is up with the times and the technology, and not scraping the internet and podcast hosts and RSS feeds for updates. So fun little fact there. I actually did a conversation on the Mere Mortals Conversations with Brian of London, who's another Hive guy. And if you want to learn the backstory of the Hive and Steam drama, that's a good place to go. Sticking to your lane. I noticed that people who follow trends, they don't really know themselves, and their talents are uninteresting and probably worse, distracting. So there's plenty of people and plenty of topics where there's no you're not wasting your time on things. Like I know not to waste my time on too deep technical stuff, because I don't find it interesting, and I'm going to do a poor job of understanding it even if I do. If I look at someone like Bowen Belmer, for example, I think he's kind of in a similar camp to me, where he can't get into the deep technical details, but he knows how to host a podcast. He knows how to talk with people, to interview people. He's a real estate agent, so he's got great social skills, in fact. And if I'd found this project 2 years ago, if it had existed 2 years ago, I probably would have been doing a podcast very similar to Brain Power, because that was the stage I was in at life at this moment. Not particularly looking to interview people, but maybe in the future. But that's really cool. Rerouting back to the concept of equanimity from the last episode, I find Anton B, just in the Discord, to be a great moderator. There's helpful to people when there's genuine attempts to understand, patient with the people prodding stupidly, and then quick to enforce the law when there's scams and all this other stuff, as well as the keeping people updated on the latest info of posting news and related stuff. Having people like that, clear documentation for another example. I'm sure there's someone doing a lot of documentation work on the back end, which is in some cases menial. For some people, they really enjoy doing it. That's the critical type of thing for projects like this. And you can have stalwarts who are, not public facing, and they don't showcase all of these sorts of things. So, here's a list of people: Rakshak Talwa, creating My Super Agents; Kevin Denman, Tiger Builder; Bowtied Bluefin; Black Flag Broker; all of the maintainers: David, Lox Bagel, Better Brand, Anon69, Energy Hound, Ryan Condron, Erik Voorhees, Anon99. All of these sorts of people, everyone who's contributed code, all this sort of stuff I think is really valuable, and the people working on it and in this project, I find it very interesting and fingers crossed we'll get to meet one day in real life when there's the opportunity and I'm not trapped here in Australia. So, I kind of joked about this. What does it take to be an OG? Everyone wants to be an OG. It's a cool status symbol, and it gives you some respect and things like this. And look, the whole concept of wanting to be an OG is stupid, because who wants to do something just so that they can then try and flaunt it in 5-10 years time? And the flaunting of something like that is stupid in itself. But I like looking at these sorts of things, and who is interacting with Morpheus at the moment? It's the nerds. It's the people who are into a technical idea and want to try and see that come to life. And then, if it catches on in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, it can be fun to look back and be like, damn, do you remember when you could do this, or you could do that, or when we had this problem, or this sort of thing? So the layer 0, my kind of final thoughts on that would be, I'm very impressed with what I see within Morpheus, and it's a large portion of the reason of why I'm here. The types of people who are interacting with this project and spending their time, money on it is very, very inspiring. It's not the right word. Gratifying is also not right word. It fills me with confidence, something like that. So, if you want to join in on this, time to roll up your sleeves, get to working on something, create a Morpheus gang sign, Morpheus. But everything that I see going on here in terms of the community aspect, I'm really impressed by. So that's it for today on the Mere Morpheus podcast. This is a value for value podcast, and I do all of this upfront for you, so there's never going to be any advertising, there's never going to be any sponsorships, there's never going to be a paywall, for example, and I try and just provide this value for you. And if you get any value from that, oh man, I would really, really appreciate it if you sent it back my way. And there's quite a few ways of doing this: time, talent, and treasure. Time, just sharing the time to share this with someone. Word of mouth, super critical. Letting them know of, hey, I really like this podcast, check this out, sending a link to them, creating a clip from this if you want to, of, providing feedback to me, joining in on the live when I do it. Talent-wise, I do stuff with the graphics, but the audio quality could be improved. Any memes you'd like to see, Discord answering with me, helping out with the website, anything that you notice that I'm doing wrong with this, spelling mistakes, all these sorts of things are pretty valuable. And I really appreciate knowing what you want to hear and how I could make this better. And then finally, treasure. I do spend a lot of time on this, so contributing back some money is certainly appreciated. I've got an address listed down below. You could send some more there. You can use me as a staking reference if you are going to do that. There is also the build a subnet I've got up, so staking to that is very much appreciated. That's only on the Arbitrum network at the moment. And then simple things like PayPal, link down below, as well as using a podcasting 2.0 app, a modern podcasting app, and streaming some Bitcoin or sending me a boostergram in there would be very much appreciated. If you want to know more about that, go to Mere Mortals Podcast or podcasts.com/support. I've got both of those websites now. So yeah, that's it for today. A couple more episodes coming up, and then I'll be traveling to Europe and ending off of season 1. So I really do hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Ciao for now. Kyrin out. Bye.